Okay, I see that we are online, and I would welcome everyone to our today's Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies discussion on the Balkans in a new era, an overview of the Croatian presidency. Today's event is part of the Stay Home, Stay Informed series, and you see we try to keep our audience well up to date. I would like to thank the Martens Center for organizing this event, and special thanks goes, of course, for our speakers joining us today. I welcome very much Goran Grlić-Radman, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs from Croatia. Then his colleague Nikola Dimitrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs from North Macedonia. And last not least, David McAllister, Member of the European Parliament, Chairman of the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee, and as well, I'm happy to have him here as Vice President of the European People's Party. Myself, I have the pleasure of moderating today, and I'm the Secretary of External Relations in the European People's Party. We have today about 1 hour, and after some introduction and starting questions with our distinguished guests, we shall also have some time for your questions if you post them here also on Facebook. As regards our topic of today, I think the date of our event could not have been chosen better, because yesterday, and I think we all witnessed the very first video conference of the EU Western Balkan Summit, and of course the original idea was to hold this meeting in Zagreb itself, hosted by the Croatian EU presidency, but as we all know, the pandemic changed all of our agendas and all of our lives. Just as a side note, I would also mention here that we as EPP, as European People's Party, we organized as well, ahead of this summit, our own EPP Family EU Western Balkan Summit with our leaders from the region and from the EU. So for sure, the Zagreb Summit was planned as one of the highlights of the Croatian EU Council presidency, led by Prime Minister Andrej Plenković and his team. And I'm thankful that Andrej insisted on having this summit at least as a video conference, and for sure our Western Balkan friends would have deserved being there, everybody in full person, but it is important that it took place. As further highlights of the Croatian presidency, I could also mention the final Brexit agreement could have been sealed, actually very sad news, but unfortunately also had to be done. In March, we all remember this, all of us following the Balkans very closely, the EU could finally agree on opening accession negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia. End of March, again, very good news. North Macedonia became the 30th member of NATO, all during the Croatian EU presidency. So, what is next? What can we still expect? Gordon, you still have a couple of weeks left. What can we still expect from the Croatian presidency? And does that really mean a new era for our Western Balkan friends? As Croatia took over the presidency of the Council of the EU for the very first time, you all had a very ambitious program with different main priorities. But due to the corona crisis, those priorities had to be reshifted. In your point of view, and I would like to start with you, Minister, were the summit objectives reached? And do you feel that the European perspective, even if the word enlargement was not mentioned in the final document of the Western Balkans, has been reaffirmed, and our 6 Western Balkan countries feel the same? So I would like first to give to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Croatia the floor to give us here an update to this question. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Liba Patrick. So just thank you very much, and I welcome you to next day to Croatia, to Zagreb Summit, although it is not Zagreb Summit, but really it was so nice to see the leaders of the not only Western Balkan but of the European Union, unfortunately in the new reality, and so we are really a little bit disappointed because not to have the 1,000 people, and you know that so we are the Croatians are very temperate Mediterranean with a characteristic, and we expected so many people, you know, around here in Zagreb, and to see our national university library, and the capital city of the European Union. But however, so the pandemic crisis of the virus is in the focus of our priorities. But even more, we should just stick together and to find a way to live and with a reality. And it is in a common single market. It is the economy, and we should to find common solutions. Yes, and really we prepared an ambitious program for our first ever presidency of the Council of the European Union. And as mentioned in the background note for this event, the motto of our presidency, a strong Europe in a world of full of challenges. When we were preparing our presidency and when we were thinking about the challenges ahead of us, we couldn't have imagined that this level of challenge we all are facing today due to coronavirus pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on the way of life of all of us. And of course, it has a huge impact on our presidency as well. We had to shift our focus to the EU response to the crisis and to the preparation for the recovery. However, it does not mean that we dropped our priorities. On the contrary, we continue to work on our main priorities, including enlargement, even in this challenging time. We set two key priorities: historic decision on opening of accession negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania, and of course, yesterday, following with the Zagreb summit yesterday. Let me just start with the Zagreb summit that took place yesterday in the format of video conference. Our Prime Minister, actually during the European Council video conference, which took place on 24th of April, he actually proposed to host such a summit because we are convinced that it is, and we were convinced that it is important to show strong political support at this highest level to our neighbors in the Western Balkans. As you know, during the last 20 years before yesterday's summit, there were only 3 such gatherings. Zagreb in 2000, Thessaloniki in 2003, and Sofia 2 years ago. We strongly believe that we should not allow again for such political vacuum as was between Thessaloniki and Sofia. Secondly, we are convinced that regular political dialogue at the highest level between EU member states and the Western Balkans countries would enhance our relations, links, and cooperation. The EU leaders expressed yesterday in Zagreb, based on the Croatian proposal, their readiness to strengthen the political dialogue, including regularly at a high level between the EU and the Western Balkans. The Zagreb Declaration, as you know, has 3 key messages. First, reaffirmation of the EU's commitment to the region's European perspective. Secondly, solidarity and partnership in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And thirdly, the region's commitment to the EU values and reforms, including the security cooperation between the EU and the Western Balkans. So, to answer your question, yes, the summit has achieved the objective. It reaffirmed the European perspective of the Western Balkans. And it also sent a strong signal that the EU stands firmly by our friends and neighbors in the Western Balkans. I know that so there are our friends from Nikola Dimitrov, my colleague and friend, the minister from North Macedonia and Albania. They wanted to her when, but of course I think it's very important to know, of course, as soon as possible. And we are also eagerly wanted and we are interested in to start with of course, with this opening negotiation with the EU. And we strongly believe it will be really in the near future. We believe that with the steps forward taken during our presidency, including the new methodology, decision on opening accession negotiation with Albania and North Macedonia, as well as the messages of the Zagreb summit and conclusions of the Zagreb declaration, there is again a new window of opportunity for enlargement. A new window of opportunity for enlargement. It's very, very important to know, and we hope that both sides, EU and Western Balkan, will continue on this path. The decision on opening of accession negotiation with North Macedonia and Albania was one of the main priorities of our presidency. Really, we are very, very proud of this fact, and we invested really a lot of political and diplomatic efforts in this realization, like as our Prime Minister yesterday mentioned. I am glad that my friend Nicola is here with us today and to tell us more about, of course, what this decision means for his country and its people. The decision was also crucial in order to restore the credibility of the EU in the region. It showed that the EU delivers on its promise. It confirmed that Europe is willing and able to take geopolitical decisions, even in these difficult times of coronavirus pandemic. To sum it up, our goal was to put the topic of enlargement back on the EU agenda, on our agenda, Croatian agenda, and we have managed to reassert the EU's enlargement policy. Looking beyond our presidency, dear friends, be assured that Croatia will continue to advocate for the continuation of a credible and effective enlargement policy. We know it is of strategic importance for Europe as a whole. Thank you.
Dear Minister, thank you very much for this introduction, and also, of course, congratulations to Prime Minister, to you and your team to these achievements, and that you also could keep your priorities. Enlargement, I would say, instead of enlargement, we could even say enrichment, if we see the importance of this process. And also, thanks again for insisting on this video conference. At least I remember yesterday we also had the EPP summit, and Prime Minister Plenković was there alone in the library, and he said he's like kind of feeling like in the video home alone, but we hope that the borders soon will be open again and we can meet and work together also in person, and we are all working together for this aim. Allow me now to come to our next speaker, to your colleague, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of North Macedonia, Nikola Dimitrov. As was mentioned before, the green light for accession talks has been given in March for Albania and for North Macedonia. But my question to you, what are the next steps? Has, for example, the framework for negotiations, the date, the dynamics, the specifics with the new methodology, has this already been defined? And do you see it really as a green light, or you feel like it's an orange light if you use the symbol of a traffic light, since the corona crisis seems to slow down all the processes in Europe and worldwide? And last but not least, in this first group of questions to you, how satisfied are you as recipient from the outcome of yesterday's summit? Please, the floor is yours, Minister. Microphone. I think we don't hear. We need the microphone, please.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, Martin Center, and you for being our moderator. And I'd like to send a virtual greeting both to Gordon and David. It's great to see you. Hope to see you in person hopefully at some point this year, and a greeting to our viewers. I'll try to be concise and brief. For us, I don't think it is an overstatement to call the March green light historic. If nothing else, we've been really working for that for over 15 years. As a candidate country, we have deserved 10 positive recommendations by the Commission. So for us, it was really to put the phrase European perspective into the perspective of North Macedonia in that timeline. It was really long overdue to make that step. In the last 3 years, we managed to invest in our democratic institutions, in the rule of law in the country. We invested tremendous political capital into resolving seemingly intractable disputes with neighbors. So we invested a lot, essentially deciding that it is time to assume the responsibility of this generation and turn the page in our history. Regrettably, both successes took place in the midst of the pandemic, so we couldn't really celebrate. 26th of March, the decision of the European Council, or the endorsement of the European Council of the decision of the General Affairs Council, and the formal date of our NATO entry, the next day, 27th of March. This was a beam of lightness in the darkness of the pandemic. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank Croatia, Gordon, but also Andrej Plenković, the Prime Minister, for their role in this historic achievement. What's next? At the moment, as we know, the decision was made in the context of approving a new methodology that addressed some concerns of some member states with respect to the accession process. And the negotiating framework is being drafted and worked upon in the Commission. The team of Commissioner Verhey, but also all the experts in DG NEAR. And we look forward to see how these important novelties will be implemented. The reversibility that is introduced, we have nothing to fear. We haven't been working so hard to get in the accession process to go backwards. We would like to use the accession process to move forward. And we are encouraged by the recent reports of the Freedom House, where we are making the trend is quite positive. We are in green when it comes to the trend. And the Bertelsmann Foundation on political transformation and good governance. So then we have more political steer, more involvement by the member states in the process of assessing reforms and producing the progress reports of the Commission. There is the issue of economic convergence and essentially recognizing and rewarding reformers by opening up access to more funds for the achievers. And I think this is definitely the right move. And it was one of the very positive aspects in the new methodology. This is not set in stone, but what we hear from our friends in the Commission, that this will likely be put out for a discussion among the member states in early June. And then this process will eventually lead to a decision to approve the negotiating framework and have the first intergovernmental conference, probably under the German presidency, following our friends in Zagreb. So this is, in terms of the mechanism and the steps, what next. The Zagreb summit, regrettably, we couldn't be there to see all the preparations. In a way, the Croatian presidency, from my perspective, is virtual in logistic terms, but it's very substantial in political terms. We've witnessed important political decisions. You've mentioned some of them, Patrick, in your introduction. And for us, of course, the all-important historic green light on 26th of March. There are four important takes from the Zagreb Summit Declaration. There is a recommitment to the European perspective. Me personally, I think we would, first of all, we welcome this definitely, but I think we could have used finishing the business. I think the European project will not be finished until the Western Balkans is part of the Union. We are a region that is geographically surrounded by member states, and both the citizens of the Balkans and the citizens of the European Union will be better off if there is no uncertainty and if there is good governance and prosperity in our geography. So we need to finish this business. So whether enlargement or completion, which is a more precise term, I think, but it's still good that there was a recommitment to the European perspective. Deeds, at the end of the day, are more important than declarations, and we have a major result in March. Decisions to start accession with both Tirana and my country, with North Macedonia. Then the 3.3 billion of euros mobilized to help the region to tackle the pandemic and its aftermath, the economic consequences of the pandemic. I think by far the European Union is the biggest partner and helper, donor to the region. I think it's important to state that and to repeat that publicly in terms of strategic communication in our region. Then there is a task for the Commission to come up with a robust investment and economic development plan after this Zagreb summit. This will happen in the second half of this year. We are a region that has an immense trade deficit with the European Union in tens of billions of euros in the last 10 years. And it's going to be good for the people of the region and for the rest of Europe to start decreasing this, to work on the economic convergence. So there was a very interesting article by Dusan Reljic, I think yesterday, where he gives some numbers on the brain drain. In 2018, about 230,000 citizens of the region got a residence and a working permit in the European Union. So in a way, in terms of the economy of the region, we are in a race with time. Either we're going to make our region more prosperous and properly European, or our people will move to Europe one by one, or family by family. So I think this is very much important, and we should put an emphasis on this upcoming investment and economic development plan. And lastly, there is a commitment that the leaders will meet the leaders of the region on a regular basis. I don't think we should underestimate this. As Gordon mentioned, this is the fourth time in the last 2 decades that we have these gatherings. Zagreb 2000, Thessaloniki 2003, 15 years gap, Sofia 2018, and now Zagreb again 2020. So if we manage to have, let's say, biannual Western Balkan CU summits, I think this will be very important. And I'm going to finalize with my big picture point. I think in the post-pandemic world, I don't think globalization will disappear, but we're going to see a more regional, let's say, regionalization. And as many of these last year's crisis highlighted, let's say the migration crisis, the Balkan route, this region is critical for Europe's security and stability. How we govern ourselves, how we do our economies, do we have free media, and if rule of law is fully in place, is important for our people, but it's also important for the European Union. And I think we should use this sense of togetherness that the pandemic created. To be honest, we feel as almost members. We are part of all European Union mechanisms in the context of the facing and fighting the pandemic and its consequences. Use this renewed momentum also with the help of our Croatian friends to get the region back, to get the EU back in the region strategically and focus on the real issues. And the real issues are the reforms and the economy. And we, as I'm talking more on behalf of the region now, I think we don't really have a strategic alternative to the European Union. And but it's not enough to say that. I think there is an increasing commitment, especially in the public opinions of the region, to push reforms. As we were supposed to have early elections in April, we had many polls. Rule of law and accountability is in the top priorities of our voters, of the Macedonian citizens. And this is what makes me optimistic about our European future. Thank you.
Dear Minister, thank you very much also for your response. And last but not least, I would like to very welcome warmly again David McAllister. And as I understand, you are just now freshly coming out of your AFET meeting. Just the minutes before we started our discussion, the EU Enlargement Commissioner Oliver Varhey, also an important key driver in the revised and strengthened methodology and for enlargement, updated you and the AFET committee on the outcome of yesterday's summit. So you have also all the latest news there, and you also attended our EPP summit. And furthermore, in your recent pre-summit statement, you also gave a statement before the summit, you were referring to the summit as an opportunity for a step change by all parties in the enlargement process. So what did you mean by this? And was this yesterday really a step change achieved? And as we have in our title, we proclaim even a new era for the relations with the Western Balkans. So how do you see that? And very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and a warm hello from Brussels to all who are following our debate. There's not really much I can add after the two foreign ministers have spoken. I can underline what both dear friends have said. I consider yesterday's Zagreb summit a success. It was the highlight of the Croatian presidency, chaired by our EPP friend Andrej Plenković and his team. So I can only say well done to our Croatian friends for what they have achieved. Now, before the summit, we had a statement, an unusual statement in the European Parliament, where not only the Foreign Affairs Committee chair, which I am, but also the 6 standing rapporteurs and the 5 delegation chairs published a cross-party statement with 3 main messages. First of all, underlining that in the end, the ultimate goal must be EU membership for all 6 Western Balkan countries. In the wording, which all 27 member states had to agree upon, there wasn't such an emphasis on the word enlargement, but we in the European Parliament can speak out what it's about. Of course, in the end, it's about becoming an EU member, even though all 6 countries are sailing towards EU membership at very different speeds. And as Johannes Hahn once said, it's a regatta, not a convoy. Our second message was the importance of active solidarity between us and the European Union and our 6 partners in the Western Balkans, especially because we have seen in the last few weeks that disinformation campaigns attempt to create divisions. Disinformation campaigns where third countries are obviously responsible for. And the third message was that the European Parliament shows cross-party solidarity in standing shoulder to shoulder with our partners, and that we reaffirm the EU's unprecedented political, financial, and medical assistance to the people of the region. So that was our main message. We welcome what has happened, and we also had a good debriefing by Commissioner Vahey. Now, Patrick, you asked me, what's the step change? Well, the step change was the new enlargement methodology presented by Commissioner Vahey in a very short period of time, adopted by all 27 member states. And this revised enlargement methodology was the way forward for finally opening the accession negotiations, the accession process with Albania and North Macedonia. Now, I don't want to become too party political, but I want to underline that it was the EPP who stood side by side with Albania and North Macedonia already in December. And those member states who blocked the start of accession negotiations then, these member states were not ruled by member parties of the EPP. I think we have to make this clear. The EPP has always been the driving force of enlargement policy, and also a credible force. Now, a step change means now that concrete progress has to be made on the ground. And we will be carefully observing what is actually happening on the ground. And the new methodology has introduced a set of proposals to make this process more dynamic, more coherent, and more effective. And may I also add, it has a stronger role now foreseen for the member states in the negotiation process, which makes sense because in the end, the member states decide on the opening and closure of negotiation chapters. And how often did we not know until the last moment if new chapters could be opened or not, because some member states were perhaps not 100% involved in the process. So to make a long story short, that was a good summit yesterday. We have shown our support and solidarity with the 6 Western Balkan countries. They now have to do their homework, and we will be ready to support. I hope that we can see real progress with all 6 countries in the upcoming years.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you for bringing in here also the EPP line. And if I look at the questions also coming in and the time we have, I would like to have a second round now in reverse order. So staying with you, David. As we say, we are talking about a new era here. And you followed very much Serbia rapporteur, and also as AFET chairman, you continue. I think for a new chapter in the Western Balkans, the Serbia-Kosovo relations are crucial. And the US have been following an approach, their own approach there also as regards the special envoy Richard Grenell. So the EU nominated now Miroslav Lajčák from our side. Where do you see here the next steps and the challenges ahead? What we have now, what can we expect from the German EU presidency and the focus there? Will it be only a COVID-19 presidency? Or so these aspects I would like you to comment on for us.
Well, I guess our dear friend in Zagreb knows best that this pandemic is a huge challenge for any country that is chairing the presidency. And just like the Croats had to reshuffle their agenda, the same will apply for the German presidency. The main task for the German presidency will be the negotiations on the multi-annual financial framework, which now gets a complete new importance and a new dimension because all the economic and financial recovery activities we have already decided and are going to adopt, they will have to be sewn into this framework, the multi-annual financial framework, and it will be up to the German presidency under our friend Angela Merkel to bring all these strings together. So that's the huge challenge. On the other hand, German foreign policy has shown in the last years how much we focus on the Western Balkans. We also observed yesterday an impressive statement by Chancellor Merkel at the Western Balkan Summit. The so-called Berlin process has been initiated in Germany. It's a personal initiative of our Chancellor, and this also contributes to strengthening the multilateral ties between the Western Balkans and EU member states, and also to improve regional cooperation. So rest assured, the Western Balkans will continue to play a big role in the second half of 2020, and hopefully, as Nicolas said, we can see some real breakthrough now when it comes to North Macedonia and Albania. But of course, all depends on the progress which has actually been done on the ground. And we all know that the fundamentals are of crucial importance: the rule of law, democracy, fight against corruption, the strengthening of the parliament and the opposition rights, and much more. Now, on Miroslav Lajčák, I'll be very brief. Excellent choice, experienced foreign minister, experienced diplomat, the right man Josep Borrell picked for this job. He's not only the special envoy for the dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo, he's supposed to deal with many issues in the Western Balkans, also with this delicate situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The dialogue is of crucial importance. We need to get Belgrade and Pristina, Serbia and Kosovo back to the negotiating table. We need to discuss how we can further go step by step to normalize the relations between the two sides. And the European Union has facilitated the dialogue for many years, starting the times of Cathy Ashton, then Federica Mogherini, now under Josep Borrell. And I wish Miroslav Lajčák all the success he needs. There are many, many conflicts in the Western Balkans, but we are fully aware that to solve the conflict between Serbia and Kosovo, to find a sustainable solution, is key, not only for these two countries, but for the whole region. And that's why we need wise, measured, balanced politicians on both sides, and we need intelligent mediation by the European Union. The Americans are also active, and I think the Americans also agree that we need a solution in the end with a compromise which both sides can fully accept.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this reply. And I see here now a question from the audience, and this question is to Foreign Minister Dimitrov from Mr. Tomic. So the question goes, how can the bureaucratic and slow process of EU integration continue to be an attractive prospect for the Western Balkans, as the East is offering much faster decision-making and results even through hybrid regimes? So also a bit of provocative question we have here, but it's of course about the strategic choice. And how would you answer this question, Minister?
I think the realities on the ground already provide the answer. Our region trades, the trade of our region with the European Union amounts to over 70% of the regional volume. The foreign direct investments in our region are something similar. Over 70% of the companies opening jobs in our region come from the European Union. Geographically, our geography, we are already in the geography of the European Union. Once we all join the Union, the map will not enlarge because the region is this gray zone and surrounded by member states. I mentioned the problem of brain drain. When people move, they and their families to member states of the European Union. And some countries have done research. There is some regional research as well. It's not always the economic situation that is the key incentive for people to go. It is because they want to have predictability, normalcy, to live in a country where education is good, where the healthcare is good, and they would like to live in a country where there is rule of law, that there is justice, that there are functional parliamentary democracies, etc. So I think if we ask the people in North Macedonia, it varies, and it partly depends on whether we are successful or not in our journey towards the European Union. But the support is between 70 and 85% in the last years. Probably now it's closer to the higher figure because of the March green light, the political decision to finally start those accession talks. So I think the question is actually answered, that if we want to be a functional, prosperous European democracy, this is the way. And I think the new methodology will actually make the process somewhat less bureaucratic, because there are paragraphs and I'm, as with many others, I'm personally eager to see the new methodology applied in a concrete, tangible negotiating framework. But I think instead of talking about opening and closing chapters, there will be roadmaps. It's going to be more concrete. It's going to be more hands-on. We have areas of reforms rather than chapters. And I think the more we do at home, the more people see the difference, the less bureaucratic this whole process will be also felt by the people.
Okay, thank you very much for this answer. And I would like to come to the Foreign Minister of Croatia now, on our way back. It was also mentioned already in our discussion the importance of the economic recovery, of the EU investment plan for the EU. It was supposed to be presented now, but because of the pandemic, this investment plan of the EU could not have been presented. But on the other hand, also the sum of 3.3 billion euros, front-loaded money also was mentioned. So one question is, could have we done better to communicate this in the EU? And what is the Croatian EU Council presidency in the last and the second half doing to help reboost the European economy? I think tourism is very important for all over Europe, but especially for the Western Balkans. Also, where do you see here the challenges we are having? So maybe you could, Goran, could allude a bit on these two aspects.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patrick. So, like David, he came out from the AFET. So it's also me that I came out from the government session, and it's just in the neighborhood. But so that's very easy to get in the such. So, and we are used to be on. To have this also to this conference. Of course, we didn't expect it, first of all, and no one in European Union that the pandemic crisis, pandemic coronavirus, COVID-19 will be in focus of the European Union, and of course that. Our presidency, Croatian presidency, really has indeed been heavily affected by the coronavirus pandemic. But we found the ground, and we just the found today. First of all, it was necessary to just to organize. Yourself, every country, the health system is on the national authorities, and it is not the common European policy. But however, we found a way, and we also found the solidarity, and taking into account that on the 13th of March, the two legislation package. We are given by the European Commission and European Council, and with 37 billion euros. And on the 2nd of April, more than 50 billion euros. But of course, and also during our presidency, we had also to adapt to the unseen conditions in the history of the European Union. At the present moment, as you know, we are waiting for the Commission to come up with a modified MFF proposal. I think so that the AFET, the David, is also interesting and to have it, and like the old institution of the European Union. And this proposal, together with a comprehensive recovery plan, represent the main instrument of our economic recovery from the major socio-economic consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, enable facing new challenges. But Patrick, what is very important, and you didn't mention probably, that together with the European Commission, the European Parliament, and so the trialogue and other stakeholders, Croatia was planning to launch the conference on the future of Europe in just 2 days, on 9th of May, Europe Day. And we will continue with this in the process. That is an opportunity to create our joint vision of Europe's future together with all member states, EU institutions, and our citizens. Of course, it is European common responsibility, and to build a bright and prosperous future for our citizens. You mentioned also the tourism. On 27th of April, the Minister of Tourism summoned a video conference with all the Ministers of Tourism of the European Union, and because Croatia is really a touristic country, and I don't want to make discrimination between the others, but however, it's a really beloved destination for the Europeans. And we would like to open it, to ease the lockdown. They're starting on 11 May with 3 phases, but probably together with other countries in the European Union. You know that epidemiological picture, it's not the same. It's just it's varies from country to country. Probably with Slovenia or with Austria or with Hungary, we have the similar epidemiological picture. But of course, we would like to unify it and to see that all the European countries to have an exit strategy. And in this regards, I am really very optimistic. And so to say that we are during our presidency, so we organized 29 conferences, and with yesterday Zagreb summit, altogether 30. And we are in this regard, so that just to mention the EU cooperation in various EU sectors and policies, health and medical equipment procurement, facilitation of cross-border transport and provision of food supplies and essential goods, and increased consular cooperation. It's very, very important that we Europeans showed the solidarity in repatriation. It was really on a good platform and test, and it has proven that in the European Union is existing the solidarity. Solidarity, like according to the Schuman's Declaration 70 years ago. Solidarity together. The presidency, in cooperation also with the EU institutions, ensured the continuity of the legislative process within the European Union. Many legislative proposals have been agreed swiftly with a focus on the immediate response to the crisis. And the EU agreed and adopted significant financial package, as I mentioned before, to support member states, health system, economies and citizens, and protect our citizen jobs. and not to neglect and not to forget the Western Balkan countries with 3.3 billion euros. And of course, as you know, in Europe, that we in Croatia, in Zagreb, in this very, very difficult circumstances, our capital city, Zagreb, was hit by a strong earthquake on 22nd of March, and leaving many of our citizens homeless on top of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I use the opportunity and to also to express my gratitude also to you, and also to thank everyone warmly for all the help and support we received. And I hope that it left less than 2 months and to end our EU presidency. And I hope that we will learn from the experience of this crisis and work towards making Europe more resilient to similar or any other potential future crisis, especially in protecting our supply chains and bringing back to Europe the production of essential strategic goods and food in order to ensure the self-sustainability of our continent. As far as I'm concerned, I will be organizing the FAC in trade format on 9th of June. For us, it's very, very important to establish and to protect and to just to increase the importance of the WTO, World Trade Organization, and unfortunately we were not able to organize it in Nur Sultan. This is a ministerial conference, but however we will be in charge and to organize this FAC trade on 9th of June, also through in the video conference format, and so many others activities. I think it's in our idea. My Prime Minister supported this idea to organize the video conference as a follow-up of the Zagreb summit with the ministers, respective the countries, EU, the ministers of Western Balkan countries, and probably the 27 leaders. We will see. But however, I know that Nicola, he asked me, and why just the leaders, the presidents or prime minister, why not also the ministers? It should be also our party, I think so, just to continue our discussion on the Western Balkans. I think so. I'm sure that Nicola is supporting this idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have to excuse Chairman McAllister. He had to go to another meeting, but we have 2-3 more minutes. And if I look at questions, this information, I would like to give the last question to Minister Dimitrov. And I have here in my hands, of course, Politico this morning came up with the 4 takeaways from the virtual summit. And point 2, I read here: forget China, show us some love. How did you perceive the EU support which came? We heard now the 3.3 billion. Maybe it came late. Maybe it was not so well communicated. I also would like to mention here that also solidarity from the Western Balkan countries, Serbia sending support to Italy. So maybe you could very briefly can answer these questions so we can also close on time. And with this question, maybe we could finish. Please, Minister.
Thank you so much. I think this is a topic that we need to discuss and think through. I think both we in the region, but also the EU itself, we can improve in the way we communicate. And usually there is a gap between what takes place in reality on the ground and the perceptions. I think there was a good piece by Wolfgang Kischinger of the Munich Security Conference. Europe needs to win hearts and minds of the Europeans in this context as well, because this was an issue not only with regard to the Western Balkans, it was an issue within the EU itself, in particular concerning some member states. I can maybe share what we do. I try to very often and find smart ways to pass that message that the first initial announcement for procuring most required medical equipment came from the EU. It took a while for that to be delivered. I don't think it was delivered with a big airplane landing at the airport in Skopje, but it was delivered. We are part of the joint procurement mechanism. Stranded Macedonian citizens in Peru, Botswana, and many other places where we did not use government chartered flights to get people back were helped by the European Civil Protection Mechanism. EU, while initially did not exclude the region from this special authorization scheme for exporting protective medical equipment with regard to the coronavirus, eventually it did exclude us together with Norway and other countries. So we are part of we are eligible to apply to the EU Solidarity Fund. So somehow in a way, we live in times where it's not the problem of getting enough information. In a way, it's the problem of identifying the real news in this mass overwhelming information that people get. So I think it's not easy for citizens to have a clear picture what's really happening. And I think we should help in that regard. We should be clear. We should fight fake news with real news. This is at least what we are trying to do. And whenever, because I think the help that we have received from the European Union is incomparably more help than from any other friend and partner. And I think we have to say that. I think it helps both the EU and the people to know that for a fact. So, I mean, of course, from a position of a foreign minister, I have to be somewhat careful in commenting other countries and other leaders. So I don't think I will venture in that direction. But my final point is I think we can do better in how we communicate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think it was a nice word. I think we all can do better from all the sides, all the parties involved on the reform process, on the communication, on the support. So we are waiting, of course, also for the MFF, for the support. I think we need solidarity, pan-European solidarity to come out of this crisis. We have economic challenges all ahead of us. So we see, and I want to quote also Ursula von der Leyen in our EPP summit yesterday, said again, Europe is not complete without the Western Balkan countries, and this is very true. I would like to congratulate, of course, the Croatian EU presidency, and I want to wish you, Gordon, and the team good luck for the rest, for the remaining time of this presidency, and a good handover to Germany. I would like to thank all of the speakers and the Wilfried Martens Center for having us. And last but not least, I thank you, the participants, following us, watching us, for your interest. Keep in touch, and let's work together for a new era, in the Western Balkans, because we need you. Thank you very much, and all the best to your capitals, to Skopje and to Zagreb. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and greetings. Stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Also alles Gute.